So moved.
Second. So motion and second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And motion, agenda is approved.
Hand you your mic and Bill your mic.
Move on to item 2, election of officers. This is our annual election of the officers for the coming year. And I'd like to make a motion on that myself to just switch places with Mr. Evans, Director Evans, and make him the chairman, and I'll move back to the treasurer's position. Could I have a motion to that effect? I give the motion. Could I have a second to that effect?
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? And there are none. Mr. Evans, you are now chair. Thank you.
I had a root canal, so I'm gonna do this the best I can. I finished about 25 minutes ago.
Oh,
So I'm gonna talk slowly.
Subtitles.
he just
Are
wants
there
sympathy
any?
today.
Are there any community announcements?
Do you have any tissue?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Kathy Hansen with the Mojave Transportation Museum. Want to let you know, Happy New Year, everyone. Plane Crazy Saturday will be held January 18th, and our speaker is Cam Martin, and he's going to be talking about Robert McCall, and years ago, but he was amazing, and Cam worked with him on many projects. So that will be our Plane Crazy for January 18th. He did the artwork for the film 2001, Space Odyssey, and much of the artwork for Tora. So he not only did murals in museums, and but he worked in the film industry as well. I just wanted to recap a little bit. For 2019, we had some very interesting speakers. We started the year with Joe Viviano, and he talked about senior pilots. Wasn't offended. How age affects pilot performance. But he was funny, and he was great. He's been a pilot for over 50 years and won an award from the FAA celebrating that. In February, Mashar and Gary Spencer came and talked about their V8 powered long easy aircraft. They put a Ford V8 in it, and it was very impressive. In March, we had a presentation and book signing by Chad Slattery, and he talked about his book called Inside Aviation Photography. Great book.
I wish I'd have had that book about 30 years ago.
Yeah. And then April was the 7th, April 12th and 13th was the 7th annual Mojave Experimental Fly-In and Indoor Fly-In, but it was kind of overshadowed, and I mean that literally, by the first flight of Strato launch, because when Strato launch took off, the shadow, I'll never forget watching that shadow pass over, because the sun was just right, and I get chills thinking about it today. It was most impressive. But what a great time that was. And then we went ahead and had a plane, Draco, the big red, yes, Wilga. I used to think it was the ugliest airplane on the planet, but this one wasn't. Unfortunately,
that's new meaning of the ugly, because
yes,
beautiful.
Unfortunately, it burned up. We crashed
Did it catch
that.
fire? It crashed.
Yeah,
It caught
yeah,
fire.
and it
But
caught
he's
fire.
rebuilding
He's building something new now. He's
You're
building
talking about Draco?
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Draco, you'll have a runway, I think, in Reno or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's steep,
Yeah.
but it didn't
Yeah.
catch fire. I didn't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
thought it did. And then our regular Plane Crazy was April 20th, and we had the Bakersfield British Car Club here, and we called it a classic Wings and Wheels. And we had all these MGs and Jaguars out here parked, and they were so pretty. But then May, Glenn Bever, he's the Deputy Director for research and engineering at NASA, or the emeritus at Armstrong Flight Research Center. He worked for NASA for 42 years, and he actually worked at NASA with Russia to get a Tu-144 going for some high-speed research program that NASA was working on, and he wrote a book called
Tu-144.
what did I say? Sorry, TU, that's correct. He wrote a book called Russian Encounters. He said it was really funny because most of them didn't speak English, so it was interesting for the engineers at NASA to go there and try to communicate. And then in June, Barbara Schultz came and introduced her new book called Pioneering Aviation in Kern County. And Kern County established the nation's first county airport in 1928. I didn't know that. And but anyway, her books are fabulous, and this one in particular is really good, and she talks about Mojave a lot. Then in July, we had Dave Maston, the founder of Maston Space Systems, talk about to the moon, back to the moon and beyond. And then that was July 20th, which was actually the anniversary of Neil Armstrong walking on the moon, and Apollo 11. So that was kind of neat. So Cam Martin, not to be outdone, in August came and talked about Neil Armstrong, and called it Before the Fireworks, and talked about Neil's life before he went to the moon. And Neil's favorite program was the X-15. He just could talk about the X-15 all day. But he served as a project pilot on the F-100, the F-100C, the F-101, the F-104. He flew the X-1, the X-5, the F-105, the 106, the B-47, KC-135, and made 7 flights in the X-15. So the guy was an airplane nut. He loved to fly. Then in September, we had Virgin Galactic Chief Pilot Dave Mackay. I asked
That
him,
was a great program.
and that was a fabulous program. The name is spelled Mackay, but he says, just think of the sky. So it's Mackay. So that helped me. But yes, that was a fabulous program. And the title of his presentation was 110 Years of Flying Machines from a Blériot to a Ballistic Space Flight, with a few others in between. But he actually flew a Blériot. Interesting aircraft to fly. Then in October, we had the 40th anniversary of the production Long Easy first flight. It was the 40th anniversary. We held it at the event center. Guest speakers were Burt Rutan, Dick Rutan, Mike Melville. And it was amazing to me that attendees came from all over the world. We had a guy there who came because he wanted to meet Burt Rutan from Portugal. He was building a Long Easy in Portugal. There was a young woman there from China. I forget, there was a fellow there from Germany. And then all 4 corners of the U.S. There's guys from Florida and Texas, and there was some guy from Rhode Island. And I thought, boy, that's a long ways away. But it was a great success, and thank you to Mojave Air and Spaceport Board and Karina and all the work. And, you know, I think of all the people that worked on this, this crazy guy taking a Long Easy and putting it up on stage. Well, you think, man, that'll work. Well, of course, this is Mojave, and the wind was blowing, and they're trying to do it without taking the wings off. And, you know, the roll-up door is not quite wide enough, and you're trying to squeak it through. I think you took the wings off coming out. But thank you for doing that, 'cause she looked fabulous up on the stage. It was perfect. So there were so many people that, you know, volunteered. Dan and Rojana Craig made cutest little centerpieces I've ever seen. And Dave Brubaker did the laser cut of the Long Easy in styrofoam. But the gliders really flew because Dan was careful to put a weight on the nose. You could take it off and it flew perfectly. Of course, an engineer would think that. November, we had Jim and Jackie Payne gave an update on Pearl and 2 soaring above 76,000 feet in a glider. That's just hard to believe. And that picture of that crazy sailplane, of course, I think Jim Payne's nuts. Because when I see the lenticulars, I'm thinking that's a good time to be on the ground. He wants to be in the air because he can go fast and high. And then December 21st, we had the presentation book signing with Dick Rattan in the next 5 minutes, embracing the impossible. And it was a full house, but it was very nice. It was a good program, and he showed lots of slides and movies, and there were lots of good questions. And you would think after all these years people would have heard the Voyager story enough, but there's always something new. And then he talked about some other experiences too in Vietnam and the AN2 at the North Pole, and he's got lots of good stories. So we had a busy year in 2019. I'm not too sure I'm going to do that Mojave experimental fly-in. No, that Zach and Rebecca Reeder had done that, and they've moved away, and I'm kind of tired. But I'll keep doing Plane Crazy. So thank you for your time. I
Thank you for all
appreciate
that work, Kathy.
Yep.
Sir, did you have a community announcement?
Only that Dick Rutan is coming on Thursday evening at 5 o'clock to the Wanda Kirk Library to talk about his book. It's a meeting of the Kern AV Historical Society. 5 o'clock, Wanda Kirk Library there on Roseman Boulevard.
Thank you very much. Are there any other community announcements? Being none, we move to item 4, consent agenda. This is considered routine and non-controversial, so are there any public comments on it? All chair will
Second.
Motion by Mr. Valentine, second by Mr. Parker. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Being none, motion passes unanimously. Action items 5A, staff report, please.
Good afternoon. I attend events, various conferences around the country from time to time. And there's one coming up at the end of January. It's the annual FAA Commercial Space Transportation Conference in DC. And Directors Evans and Parker have expressed interest in attending that conference and have asked me to give them the for board approval for their travel and conference attending.
Thank you. Are there any public comments on this item? Being none, any questions from the board?
Motion approved.
Motion to approve, Mr. Valentine. Second, Mr. Allred. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Being none, motion passes. Item 5B, please.
Great. So I've got Jason here to discuss this in further detail if anyone on the board would like to know. We've made several upgrades to our AWAS system over the years. We've got some equipment that's been obsolete now for quite a while, and we're just trying to free up some space. There is actually an airport that could use it that reached out to us through our AWAS vendor. And before we do that, we actually have to declare it surplus, have the board declare it surplus, and then we can propose to sell it to them.
Any public comment? Any questions from the board? Cheryl will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve, Mr. Deaver, and second by Mr. Parker. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Motion passed unanimously. Item 5C.
Good afternoon. I'll take 5C and 5D, and we can discuss those together. They'll last for separate action. The district has been working on its safety expansion project. As part of that, we have been dealing with 4 homeowners in terms of acquiring their property. Landowners, not home, just land. Yeah, no homes out there. So we've been negotiating with 2 of those landowners. 1 we have not been able to get a hold of, and so I'm going to ask you to table one of those resolutions this afternoon until the February meeting. That's with the Compton Family Trust, that we believe that we have located them now. The other is Professional Equities. They have been unwilling to negotiate an acquisition of that property, So we're going to ask the board to adopt a resolution of necessity authorizing our trial counsel, Doug Gosling, to proceed with a condemnation action to acquire that property. One of the preliminary steps, we have to undertake environmental review to determine whether or not CEQA or NEPA would apply to this acquisition of property. In consultation with our trial counsel, we have concluded that first, CEQA does not apply to this because there's no plan to cause a physical change to the property once it's acquired. It's simply a safety zone. But even if that was not the case, that it is categorically exempt under CEQA. So item C is that determination that the acquisition of this property is categorically exempt. So we would ask the board to approve the finding of that exemption and authorize the CEO to transmit that to the county for filing. And that is item C. Item D is the resolution of necessity, and we can discuss that in a minute. Are there any questions about the CEQA portion of this and the exemption?
Any questions from the board? Any public comment on this item?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Mr. Deaver, second by Mr. Allred. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Being none, motion passes unanimously. Counselor, 5D.
So for 5D, there's a resolution, let me take a step back. Under California's eminent domain law, the official first legal step that the district takes, we've had appraisals done, we've sent offers out, we've engaged in negotiations. As I said, we have 2 property owners, professional equities, and Compton Family Trust who have not entered into negotiations with us. So the first legal step we need to take is to have the board adopt a resolution of necessity that establishes the purpose and the necessity and public use for acquiring this land.
That's the motion? I mean, that's what you want the motion to be, I should say.
I will get to that in just a second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But it's close.
Okay.
Yes. So there are 2 resolutions in there. One in my tablet died, so I'm working off my phone. I apologize. I'm not checking the news or sports scores while I'm talking to you. But there are 2 resolutions. One is for professional equities and one is for Compton Family Trust. After we prepared the agenda, we got a notice back from the U.S. Postal Service that our notice of this hearing to Compton Family Trust had not been delivered. We had been led to believe it was, which is why we put them on this agenda. Then we prepared the agenda, the resolution, put it all together, and we discovered it was not the case. So I'm asking you to table the Compton Family Trust until next meeting. We have found their address. So
So we're not dealing with that, CEO?
Professional
deal with that.
equities.
Okay.
So, is there anyone here from professional equities who would like to comment on the resolution before it is adopted by the board? All right, we have been in discussions with them. I did not anticipate anyone would be here, but we have been in discussions with them. And I think next week, we're gonna have a phone call with them to further discuss purchasing the property. But we would ask, in case we're not able to come to a resolution, we would ask the board to approve this resolution, and it could just be a motion to approve a resolution of the Board of Directors, Mojave Air and Spaceport, declaring a necessity to condemn real property. Are there any questions?
No, the chair will make that motion as stipulated by the attorney. Second by Mr. Parker. Is there any public comment? Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Be none. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. So that takes care of professional equities, Compton Family Trust. We will bring back to you at the February board meeting.
We will now move to Ms. Rawlings' finance report.
These are the finance reports for month ending November 30th, 2019. The bank balance for this month increased $18,000, so we stayed stagnant for that month. The year-to-date fuel cells, we have 463,000 gallons that have been sold, so we're on track for what we budgeted for. actually above what we had budgeted for. The gym has 552 members. They are continuing to grow. I'm hoping after the first of the year that will get more people motivated to go to the gym.
I sent the notice out to all the chamber members.
Okay.
The one I got out to tenants here in the airport.
Okay.
Changed it around a little bit. Maybe we'll get some more of that one.
Yes, they have some specials for the new year.
They need to advertise local too. Maybe they get more people. Or send a letter to all the businesses. Okay?
They come visit us quarterly, so you can reach out to them and help them marketing it.
Yeah.
All right.
And then on the over 90 days, it's just Bob Green, and right now working with legal on Bob Green.
All right. You have any questions for Carrie? You know, move 6B, CEO report.
So just another quick comment on the financial reports. We do expect next month to come to the board with a budget update at least, potentially requesting some action from the board on making some changes to the budget. But we still have to go through the mid-year numbers and see where we are. But so far, we're mostly on track, I think.
Pretty good, thank you.
So just a couple of things to highlight on the report. So we are on track with our annual ASIP conversation with the Office of Airports at FAA. I went down to meet with them in early December to go through our plans for Charlie and then kind of follow on activities post Charlie. But right now we're just focused on the rehab for Charlie. So everything is on track as far as we know. It's still not signed off, I should say, but we do feel very confident that we will secure that grant in 2020. We'll come back to the board with a little bit of a timeline once we have a little bit more information from Eden Hunt, our engineering firm. Any questions on that process? Okay. And so in addition to Directors Evans and Parker traveling to DC, I will also be there the last week of January. So I've got a couple other things going on other than the conference itself. I've got the CSF board meetings, and I've got a commercial space standards meeting that Friday, so I'm actually going to be there now all week. And John will be representing the district at the NFPA meeting in Florida the first week of February. So there are a lot of conversations going on as it relates to standards for spaceports, and a couple of different organizations involved with that effort.
Does that address the thing we were talking about recently about people calling something a spaceport that's really not a spaceport?
No, this is really for commercial space operations. And then I'm happy to report that the HVAC upgrade on the tower is complete. Floyd's not here, is he?
No.
So that went really well, actually was complete ahead of schedule, which is great. And then I failed to mention last board meeting that Floyd has completed his CM certification through AAAE, which means he's a certified member. CM stands for certified member of AAAE, which we now have two, John and Floyd, on board, which is great in the world of airports. It's a pretty
Certified member of what?
of AAAE, which is the American Association of Airport Executives. So it's
Are you gonna have to pay any more?
So it's a great feather in their cap in terms of airport management. Great. Any questions for me?
I got one update on our perimeter road.
Do you know status of Perimeter Road better
Current-
than anyone else? Sorry, John.
Good afternoon, directors. Currently, the perimeter road is continuing to be worked on. Still looks like it's on target for the end of February for completion. If you have any specific questions, I may be able to answer them.
I just wondered if the weather maybe affected.
The weather did affect it a little bit, but we had some days built in for that. So.
We had some weather delays, and we also have some testing delays. We have some customer operations back there that we didn't want to disrupt, and so we really had to work a schedule with them, primarily Virgin Orbit, so we can get back and do the prep work on the road back. The schedule worked out now, and should hopefully be on track within the next 60 days to finish that.
Any other questions from the board? There are no board committees. Does any director have a comment? No directors have comments. Is there any other public comment on an item not on the agenda? Being no public comment, we move to item 8, closed session. Thank you very much, everybody.